On this Thursday night, escaping at a moment's notice. The race to get out of a town in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Looked in my rearview mirror and you can see all the smoke.
The strangers opening their homes to evacuees and the province's plea for help. Deadly heat, the rising consequences of Saudi Arabia's searing temperatures. Manitoba narrows the search of a landfill for 2 missing Indigenous women.
This is about a compassionate mission.
And the plans to help victims' families heal. Plus, he was known as a sensitive, serious, and smart actor.
I can find something in everybody to play.
Celebrating Canadian Donald Southerland and the impact he had beyond the screen.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with an out-of-control wildfire that forced hundreds of people to flee their homes. It's threatening the community of Churchill Falls, Newfoundland and Labrador, home to a massive hydroelectric power plant. Last night, the flames sprang to life, fueled by hot, windy weather. A province-wide fire ban is now in place, and resources are being deployed to try to save Churchill Falls. As Heidi Petracek reports, people in town were given just minutes to get out.
Lightning illuminated the sky as residents fled Churchill Falls Wednesday.
So it was quite the light show.
When a nearby wildfire suddenly got out of control, more than 700 residents had 45 minutes notice to get out.
So we were in the lineup getting ready to leave, looked in my rearview mirror, and you can see all the smoke from the fire, and it's just crazy.
We did see the fire go from what we thought was everything under control to out of control in a matter of an hour.
Most took this remote highway, a 3.5-hour drive to refuge in Happy Valley Goose Bay.
We had a reception center set up. Hundreds of beds were being deployed and set up.
Some stayed at the local YMCA, but many were welcomed into the homes of strangers.
And I saw families doing this, and I'm sure they were inspired by our Gander iconic story from some 23 years ago. But that happened here last night.
There are 7 wildfires in Labrador now. The one that caused the evacuation tagged number 607, covering 1,600 hectares, 6 kilometers west of Churchill Falls, on the other side of the river for now.
The risk is if it jumps the river, and the biggest driver of whether it'll jump the river or not is the wind patterns.
The province has put out the call for help such as extra air support to bolster firefighting efforts. Newfoundland and Labrador MP Seamus O'Regan, who's from Happy Valley Goose Bay, answered from Ottawa.
And of course, whatever assistance they need from us, they will get.
Churchill Falls is home to a massive hydroelectric station that powers the province and sends electricity to Quebec and the eastern seaboard. The utility says a skeleton crew has stayed behind to keep it running.
There is no change in plant output. All of our customers are being served.
Now, residents who had to leave are hoping weather cooperates so they can go back home soon. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
In New Brunswick, schools closed early because of sweltering temperatures. It was 35 degrees Celsius in some places, and with the humidex, that feels more like 45. New Brunswick remains under a severe heat warning. It's the same in much of Atlantic Canada and parts of Ontario and Quebec. The heat dome lingers, and there are threats of severe thunderstorms. Our chief meteorologist, Anthony Farnell, is keeping an eye on it. Anthony.
Donna, over the last several days, those thunderstorms have been few and far between, bringing little relief to the 30-plus degree temperatures and humidex numbers that topped 40 day after day. Today, we're finally starting to see things change. There are more thunderstorms, those big cumulonimbus clouds bubbling up, but it wasn't enough through Atlantic Canada to prevent record highs. In St. John, New Brunswick, 35 degrees. That was enough to set an all-time June record. Halifax, also the warmest temperature in the month of June, along with Newfoundland and St. John's, over 30 for the first time in June. So these are some incredible numbers, not just for the day, but for the month. And now our radar satellite is lighting up with showers, with thunderstorms, and that is the first sign that this heat dome is weakening and being pushed back down to the south. Now, over the next couple of days, there's still still some humidity around, and that also means additional rain. Friday and Saturday through much of the Great Lakes into the province of Quebec and then eventually Atlantic Canada. But I think a lot of residents will take a couple days of rain versus a humidex that got as high as 45 over the last couple of days. Donna?
All right, Anthony Farnell, thanks. A second person has died in wildfires in New Mexico. State officials say rain may help firefighting efforts there, but it also opens the door to a new threat for both first responders and those looking to flee. Jackson Proskow explains.
Charred beyond recognition, parts of Ruidoso, New Mexico are a burnt-out wasteland.
Looking at everything that they've worked for their entire lives just lost in a matter of seconds, it's very devastating.
A fast-moving wildfire torched at least 1,500 structures, including an estimated 500 houses.
It's one of the most devastating fires in New Mexico's history.
At least 2 people are dead. Nearly 8,000 others have been told to flee their homes.
The fear came in when the winds changed, and we could see the smoke change, and we were engulfed in smoke.
Survivors are taking refuge in emergency shelters, not sure what, if anything, they'll have to return to.
I don't know whether we're going to have a home.
The fires came with little warning and have since scorched an area larger than Manhattan.
We are very concerned about the potential loss of life. We know that there are several people still unaccounted for.
Across the U.S., it has already been a brutal fire season, with activity far above normal. In California, high winds are driving flames and forcing more mass evacuations. In New Mexico, there's worry the flames will give way to floods as storms drench the now barren ground. Another disaster in the making after an explosive start to fire season. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
And if it's not fire or rain, it's dust. This satellite imagery shows a massive wall of dust known as a haboob tearing across New Mexico yesterday. It stretched more than 320 kilometers from northern Mexico through Texas and into New Mexico. The speed and randomness of haboobs often catch people off guard and cause low visibility on the ground. This one is said to have led to a multi-car pileup northeast of Albuquerque, which sent 18 people to hospital. Parts of Texas are drenched by tropical storm Alberto. It made landfall along the Gulf Coast overnight. The governor issued a disaster declaration for 51 Texas counties as that storm advanced to ensure they have resources to respond. In Mexico, at least 4 deaths have been linked to Alberto, which carried sustained winds of around 80 kilometers per hour. That storm has weakened as it moves inland. In Saudi Arabia, the searing heat has been deadly. More than 1,000 people have now died during the Hajj in Mecca, one of the world's largest religious gatherings. French media is reporting the majority of those who died were unregistered worshippers performing the pilgrimage. This group is more vulnerable to the heat because without official permits, they can't access air-conditioned spaces provided by authorities. Temperatures have soared as high as 52 degrees Celsius in Mecca this week. Manitoba's government has released a timeline and details of how the search of a Winnipeg landfill will take place. The Prairie Green landfill is where the remains of 2 murdered Indigenous women are believed to be buried. It's thought the bodies of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myran ended up in the landfill on May 16, 2022, after they were murdered by a serial killer. The search will be done in 5 stages, starting with a test dig later this month. The full search will start in the fall.
The area shown in green is the area of waste that the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myran may be located in. It spans an area of approximately 100 meters by 200 meters, so that's about 4 football fields, and has a maximum depth of approximately 10 meters.
This is a robust, comprehensive, thorough search plan, the goal of which is to, for compassionate reasons, recover the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myran.
Separate from that search, there are plans to build a healing space where victims' families and elders can gather and receive support. The man accused has admitted to killing 4 women. His lawyers have argued he is not criminally responsible because he is suffering from schizophrenia. A verdict in that case is expected on July 11th. A strike by WestJet mechanics is on hold for now. Both sides have agreed to resume bargaining. WestJet says it has appeared before the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to discuss the airline's request for arbitration. Hundreds of companies' mechanics have been prepared to walk off the job tonight, and more than 30 flights were cancelled in anticipation of that. The British election is just 2 weeks away. Coming up, why Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his party could lose everything. Plus, the life of acting legend Donald Southerland, an irreplaceable presence on the screen. In Chile, a train packed with people collided head-on with another train. That impact forced one car on top of another. 2 people have been killed, 9 others injured. It's believed one of the trains was conducting a speed test when it happened. A large-scale operation is underway to untangle the wreckage, and 2 people have been detained. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is in the fight of his political life. When he called a snap election for July 4th, it was a big gamble, and right now polls show his party, the Conservatives, could be reduced to the fewest seats in the party's history, and Sunak himself is in danger of losing his own seat. As Redmond Shannon reports, a Tory wipeout would be reminiscent of what happened in Canada 31 years ago.
Today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament.
From the moment he launched the campaign without an umbrella in sight, it has been a series of missteps for British Prime Minister and Tory leader Rishi Sunak. None more so than him skipping the final D-Day commemoration event, a decision that not even he could explain.
That was a mistake, and I apologise for that.
But the decision that could define Rishi Sunak's campaign and political future is one made by someone else, by a man who has perhaps shaped British politics like no one else over the past decade.
So I have decided, I've changed my mind.
The return of Nigel Farage, aka Mr. Brexit.
I'm coming back as leader of Reform UK, but not just for this election campaign. I'm coming back for the next 5 years.
Those social conservatives, perhaps older, perhaps nostalgic, who might have been tempted back to the Conservative Party but now seem very tempted by reform.
A right-wing populist reform party, something familiar to Canadians. Preston Manning's party split the rights vote 31 years ago, pushing the progressive Conservatives to near annihilation. In Britain, polls suggest the Tories are barely ahead of Reform UK, both far behind the opposition Labour Party.
The Conservative position in the opinion polls in this election campaign is now as dire position as the party has ever previously suffered.
It's unlikely Farage's reform will win many seats. Some believe, though, his eyes are on a Tory takeover.
And it wouldn't at all surprise me if Nigel Farage were to take over from the person who takes over from Rishi Sunak.
As we've learned from British politics in recent years, anything is possible. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Rapper Travis Scott has been charged with trespassing and disorderly intoxication. He was arrested at Miami Beach Marina early this morning after police were notified about a fight on a yacht. When officers got there, they say Scott smelled strongly of alcohol and was yelling at people on board the yacht. Police say he initially listened to orders to leave the marina, but was charged after returning and becoming erratic. Troubling trend ahead, how severe drought in the U.S. and Canada is affecting our energy trade. As the climate changes and droughts become more common, some energy industry experts are sounding the alarm. Canada has exported more energy to the U.S. than we receive back, but now that trade is shifting. Industry experts are divided on whether that's a blip or a trend. Neetu Garcha reports on the complexities involved and the challenges and opportunities.
While Canadians are becoming more and more energy reliant, climate experts, both here and in the U.S., are sounding the alarm over severe droughts as the exchange of energy between the two countries is shifting.
This year, we've had to significantly draw on our neighbors for net imports to ensure our customers continue to have power in the province.
Traditionally, Canadian provinces have exported more electricity to these 5 U.S. regions than they've received back. But in February, March, and April of 2024, Canada imported more electricity from the U.S. than it received, reversing the usual trend to levels not seen in nearly 15 years.
What we're seeing right now is kind of a temporary blip. We've seen kind of the convergence of both droughts and the convergence of very cold weather here in Canada.
Electricity Canada President Francis Bradley highlights the role of renewable energy sources like wind and solar in conjunction with hydroelectric power.
2023 for certain was a dry year, but we've also experienced dry years in 2014, 2004.
Hydro-Quebec spokesperson Lynn Saint-Laurent says hydropower has an essential role to play in the energy transition because of the flexibility of hydroelectric production technology and its storage capacity. But some experts say because of climate change and the risk of more severe and more frequent droughts, we'll have to rely less on hydroelectric power generation in the future.
If you were in charge of a major hydroelectric system at the moment, you would be drinking a lot of coffee and waking up at night worrying.
This economist and former hydro utility executive is advising his Canadian clients to reduce exports to the U.S. to preserve water reservoir levels.
Well, there's no question there should be a concern. This is a white-knuckle issue.
BC Hydro CEO Chris O'Reilly says this latest drought and resulting impact on cross-border energy trade is something they'll be looking at and learning from. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Towering presence next, how Donald Sutherland's range and talent made him one of the greatest actors of his generation. If you ask anyone for a list of Canada's most beloved actors, Donald Sutherland would certainly be on it. For 7 decades, his talent and incredible range landed him hundreds of roles with some of the best directors of the century. Sutherland has died in Miami after a long illness. He was 88. His son Kiefer, who followed his dad into acting, had been estranged from him for many years, but they'd recently reconciled. And today, Kiefer said he was one of the most important actors in the history of film, never daunted by a role, good, bad, or ugly. He loved what he did and did what he loved. One of his final projects was a film with his son. Eric Sorensen looks back at his life.
With Donald Sutherland's inner calm, you just never knew. The dulcet voice could be vulnerable.
Do you love me? Do you really love me?
Or veiled evil.
We both know I'm not above killing children, but I'm not wasteful.
Or just oddball.
It's still up.
That was the name of his character in Kelly's Heroes.
No, it ain't. It looks like we're gonna find ourselves another bridge.
You have an unusual look.
Unusual, yeah, that's for sure.
Sutherland didn't look destined for stardom. Born in New Brunswick, moved to Nova Scotia, earned degrees in engineering and drama in Toronto. He preferred drama, first on stage, then bit parts in film.
Everything quiet here, sir.
In his first big film, The Dirty Dozen, the director singled him out, the part of a dimwit.
First platoon ready for inspection, sir.
Without even knowing my name, he just looked down and said, "You with the big ears, you do it." And so, they used to call me Dumbo and Goofus and whatever. Maybe if my ears had been small, he wouldn't have noticed me. Where are you from, son?
Big ears and all, his career took off, playing the unruly military doctor in MASH.
Get in some golf for ourselves. If that's okay with you, then we got a deal.
So versatile, Sutherland was sought out by renowned directors, from John Sturges to Federico Fellini, for whom he played Casanova.
Can't you see anything except in terms of how it affects you?
He starred in the Oscar-winning Ordinary People and in blockbusters like JFK.
Who has the power to cover it up?
Always seeking authenticity in his characters.
Go on, you crazy women, they can have their... Go on. You know, the truthfulness of the character and the joy in discovering that, that's been the great happiness of my life.
Discovering that truth earned Sutherland 2 Golden Globes and an honorary Oscar, where all those roles came to mind.
I wish I could say thank you to all of the characters that I've played. Thank them for using their lives to inform my life. Come in now.
He once played opposite Jane Fonda in Clute. They also had an off-screen relationship. Alongside Fonda, Donald Southerland, the activist, used his fame to speak out against the Vietnam War and later in defense of people with AIDS.
It's not a homosexual disease. It's not a drug user's disease. It's important that we stop trying to fool ourselves.
But family mattered most. Southerland married Canadian actress Shirley Douglas. Their son Kiefer went on to stardom. He would marry another Canadian, Francine Racette. They were together the rest of his life, more than 50 years. Sutherland had 5 children. Turning 80, he finally had the chance to film with the son whose fame rivaled his own.
What about you, Pa? Did you want me to come back?
What are you talking about?
I wanted to work with my father forever. This was a dream come true, and it's a memory and a moment that I will take with me forever.
Love is forever.
Southerland remained deeply connected to Canada, whether on stage in Toronto, playing Norman Bethune on film, or honoring with Kiefer the National Film Board at the Academy Awards.
The Film Board is an intrinsic element in the fabric of Canadian culture and tradition. And sure enough,
he didn't look like a Hollywood star or even the guy next door, but in more than 100 films and productions, Donald Southerland was an original. And because of that, the characters never stopped coming his way.
Southerland worked with the best in the business, and there are all kinds of tributes to him today. Filmmaker Ron Howard said he was blessed to direct Southerland and praised his incredible range and creative courage. Actor Helen Mirren called Southerland a legend and one of the smartest actors she's ever worked with. She says she will miss his presence in this world. Actor Michael Douglas simply described Southerland as a lovely, talented, and curious man. And one critic described him today as an aristocrat of screen actors. That is Global National for this Thursday. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.